Good evening, everyone. This is your evening news recap, your nightly news podcast on all the news throughout the day that I come across, giving you my take as somebody who aspires to be a politician in the near future. Hope all you guys are having a wonderful day. Today is July 2nd, and it is Wednesday. Hope everyone's doing well. It's been an interesting day through the news world. We had some updates in the P. Diddy trial, and just a few more interesting things throughout the budget bill and the Trump administration. But with that being said, hope all you guys had a wonderful day, and hope all of you guys enjoy today's episode of the Evening News Recap. Let's get right into it. Moving right on into the first topic today from the Trump administration, Paramount has settled with Trump for $16 million. In a case seen as a challenge for free speech, Paramount has agreed to pay $16 million to settle a lawsuit from Trump over editing a 60 Minutes interview with former Vice President Kamala Harris. Paramount, which owns CBS, said the money will go to Trump's library and not the president himself. Trump's lawyer said Trump had suffered mental anguish over the editing of the interviews that supposedly made Kamala Harris sound better. Under the settlement, Paramount agreed that 60 Minutes will release transcripts for future interviews of candidates, subject to redactions as required for legal and national security concerns. So basically, if I'm getting this one right, Trump got his feelings hurt because Kamala Harris was clearly a better candidate, and he got $16 million because of it. I've done a lot of research on Trump for a variety of reasons. I did a report on his crimes for one of my senior year essays. So I know quite a bit about this man's court endeavors, to say the least. And he always wins the most odd cases. Around 90%, I believe, from what my report was, around 90% of Trump's lawsuits fail or, don't go well for him. But, you hear something like this, and it's just, you think, how did he win that? How did he win this lawsuit? There's so many cases, Trump will go in and you'll think, oh yeah, he's not going to win that. And then every once in a while, you'll get the random stray case like this where he actually wins it. And it's like, how did you win that? What kind of black magic is that lawyer working? He's got to have, like, I'm trying to think of a sports comparison for this lawyer, but whoever his lawyer is, he's either, sometimes terrible and sometimes the greatest lawyer of all time. It is genuinely odd, how many strange cases Trump gets to win, to say the least. But anyways, moving on to some more interesting news. Trump doesn't know what's in his own budget bill. Trump met with House representatives, over his one big beautiful budget bill to try and convince them to vote for it, but seemingly was unaware that it would cut Medicaid. A new report from Notice says Trump met with lawmakers to listen to concerns from them over the bill. Trump told Republican lawmakers that if they wanted to win elections, they shouldn't touch Medicaid, Medicare, or Social Security. One member would then respond to Trump, but we're touching Medicaid in this bill. When asked to comment, White House spokesperson Abigail Jackson said the bill takes decisive action to protect Medicaid for generations to come by eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse in the program. President Trump is committed to protecting Medicaid for the vulnerable Americans who rely on it most. But that is not the case, as the bill cuts trillions for these services for Medicaid and so much more. Reading through the responses from Republican Senate representatives, not only do they seem to be over with this bill, but over with Trump and House Speaker Mike Johnson as a whole. It might not be all of them, but a few statements kind of stood out to me. One being Tim Burchett, who said they were being told to pass the bill and fix it later, even though they never do. He went on to say, "It's been 6 years. It's the same game. There's enough of us now that have had enough of it." Another Republican also called Mike Johnson a fool for keeping lawmakers there, waiting for the vote to continue or a further vote, whatever state of limbo that vote is in right now. It's just interesting to watch. I've talked a lot about Democratic lawmakers needing to, turn heads from Republicans and from, that entire right side. But seemingly Trump is really just doing it himself. If you ask me, it's beautiful to watch. I didn't expect so many Republicans to come out and say that they didn't support this bill, or so many Republicans to come out and say that they didn't want to vote for this bill. It was honestly a little shocking to me, but it's been quite, I guess, a warming feeling to say the least, to know that there are some Republican, lawmakers out there who, at the very least, have standards, which is nice. It is, it brings back a feeling of, you know, I'm trying to think of the right word. um, Comfort, I guess. Maybe that's not the right word, but you kind of get what I'm trying to get at here. It's just nice to hear some Republican lawmakers actually speak some truth and actually stand up against the Trump administration for once. Anyhow, moving right on into a bit of a segment on the P Diddy trial. Haven't really covered this very much, but I was talking about it with some people earlier today, so I got into it and did some research. So I figured I'd bring the research I got to you guys. The first topic we have today is Diddy ruled guilty on, or Diddy was ruled not guilty on some of the most serious charges. Diddy was on trial today for multiple charges accusing him of sexual abuse, drugging people for freak-offs, and more. The jury's verdict declared Combs not guilty of 1 count of racketeering conspiracies and 2 counts of sexual trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, but he was ruled guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. The verdict is seen as a win for Combs as his defense. After the ruling, his family clapped and cheered as Combs fell to his knees to pray. It's kind of crazy to me that they ruled not guilty after watching the videos from, the Diddy parties. But, hey, I didn't see them. So, maybe it's not what we all think or what the public thinks. Of course, there is still 2 charges for 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. And on average, those sentences tend to be 10 to 20 years. So it's likely that he will serve, a bit of time. But overall, this is, really an interesting case. But in other news, Diddy was denied bail. Judge Arun Subramanian has denied bail for Diddy as he awaits sentencing on 2 counts for transporting individuals for prostitution. Defense attorneys urged the judge to reconsider, but his decision stood firm, if I could speak. Combs' lawyer argued that his client posed no flight risk, saying he's not going to flee, he's been giving his life back. And then prosecutor Maureen Comey shot back, saying the only exceptional things about Combs were his wealth, his violence, and his brassiness, adding that his continued criminality and willingness to violate the law. This likely 100% means that Diddy will serve time, and we're just waiting on a sentence for now. But, what a clapback from the prosecutor. I mean, she's right, but that was kind of smooth, I'll be honest. I wonder what her story is behind that. But, to say the least, I'll keep you guys updated on the sentencing. I really just haven't followed this case at all. It really hasn't been interesting to me, as it's not really a more, political case. That's kind of just what I tend to follow for the most part. But, I've kind of gained a little bit of interest in this case, talking about it for, the past couple of days with some friends. So, and, you might hear about it again, you might not. Just depends um, how engaged I get into it, to say the least. Anyways, moving on to the budget bill segment, we have one little topic to cover. Not really a little one, but, House Republicans don't have the votes for a budget. House Republican leaders are scrambling to find support for Trump's budget bill. The House convened on Wednesday to discuss and possibly vote for the bill. In a PBS live stream, I believe there was a vote on an amendment, but it hasn't really moved at all. So I don't really know what's going on there. It's kind of just seemingly like a vote in limbo, maybe? I'm not too sure. But, the bill did barely make it through the Senate. Republicans just can't find support. The potential holdouts, including moderates and members of the House Freedom Caucus, met with Trump on Wednesday, which we did talk about that already. Where Trump said that they shouldn't cut Medicaid and all of that. But Andy Harris, chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, told reporters he expected a key procedural vote to fail this afternoon. GOP reps Ralph Norman and Chip Roy also plan to oppose the bill. Norman said to reporters, "What the Senate did was unconscionable." I looked up how to pronounce this word, and I still can't pronounce it for the life of me. Um, I'll vote against it here. I'll vote against it on the floor until we get it right. Adding the difficulty, many members on both sides can't make it to Washington due to bad weather, adding more doubt of passing the bill. Honestly, I think this bill is up in the air right now. The PBS vote did end up in a fail, but it was a really close one. I believe it was 111 to 112, with the Democratic side coming out on top. But it really shouldn't be a close bill. It's horrible for every American, especially rural Americans who lose SNAP coverage, who lose access, or who will likely lose access to rural hospitals, who will lose access to Medicare, who will lose access to so many things. It's going to be a close one, like the Senate vote was. But the real question is right now if Republicans will stick to their word or not on not voting, and I really hope that will be the case, because this bill is in nowhere near what which we should be putting out for the American people. It is horrible for us. It is actively harming our day-to-day lives, and no American should be standing for it. Truly, anyone who does hasn't read the bill. At the end of the day, I know there's arguments of no tax on tips, and a whole bunch of other things, but the negatives really do outweigh the positives. They truly do. Moving on to the other news segment, a judge has declared Trump's ban of asylum processing is unlawful. A federal judge has blocked the Trump administration's asylum ban at the U.S.-Mexico border, saying Trump exceeded authority when he issued the ban. U.S. District Judge Randolph Moss said Trump's 20 proclamation blocking all migrants engaged in the invasion across the southern border from claiming asylum or humanitarian protections went beyond his power, Moss wrote in his ruling. Nothing in the Immigration and Nationality Act or the Constitution grants the president and his delegates the sweeping authority to assert in the proclamation and implementing guidance. The Trump administration has 14 days to appeal this ruling. This is good. People at the very least should be able to seek asylum. Granted, I don't think the United States is the best country for that at this point. We should at least still be providing an option. It's a win, and that's what really counts these days. It's nice to see the Trump administration lose and to see, humanity, succeed, really, at this point. A lot of people come to the United States not only looking for an opportunity, but looking to get away from the bad and the ugly that the United States or corporations in the United States caused in their countries. And, it's been hard for them to do that. But, this ruling is something good for that matter. Anyways, moving on into our final news segment today, there's been a flood at the Alligator Alcatraz facility. The ice facility in the Florida Everglades, known as Alligator Alcatraz, has taken on water within a day after Trump visiting the facility. And on the supposed opening day, Florida officials have assured the public that the $450 million a year facility was built to withstand Category 2 hurricanes, but the Miami Herald reported rain seeped through the edges of the facility as the roofs and walls trembled. The water ended up spreading under poles, which hoisted the Florida and U.S. flags. There is no way, that tents and bunk beds cost $400 million a year to maintain. I'll preface this by saying I am in nowhere a prison expert, but I did do some numbers on it. Flooding on day one isn't surprising when the facilities don't have actual walls. The average prison cost in Florida is $43 million per year is the average cost to run a prison in Florida. It is $24,265 on average to house a prisoner in Florida, and the largest prison in Florida, Cross Correctional Institution, houses around 1,800 inmates. Even if the Alligator Alcatraz facility houses its maximum of 5,000 inmates, it would only cost around $121 million. It really just doesn't add up. Not only that, but they don't have a building or a facility, and the conditions are likely going to be as bad as the rest of the ICE facilities in the country. So where is this extra $329 million going? That's really just too big of a gap. It seem like it? Again, not a prison expert, but that seems like too big of a gap for local prisons and others to just have that extra. Genuinely, I'm interested. If anyone knows, anything about running prison facilities, please let me know in the comment section down below. But with that being said, hopefully you guys all enjoyed today's episode. It's been a bit of an interesting one, so I hope you all enjoyed. We're nearing the 100th episode of the Evening News Recap, which is really cool to say. Before I start this video, I'd just like to talk about that, a little. I want to do something cool for the Evening News Recap 100 episode. 100 episodes is kind of a big thing, in my opinion it is, at least. So, for one, if you guys have any ideas below, let me know. But I was thinking about, just uploading a Google form somewhere, and allowing people to submit questions or something, and maybe I'll answer questions for the news recap and during the video, or maybe something else, if you guys have any ideas, let me know down below. But yeah, with that being said, thank you everyone for watching this video. If you're on YouTube, please consider subscribing, dropping a like, dropping a comment down below. I appreciate all of your guys' takes on this content. It means the world to me that so many people, offer their takes and opinions, as I enjoy hearing what you guys have to say. If you're on Substack, please consider pledging your support. All funds go to me. As we know, I'm going to college shortly, so they'll help me pay for food and clothing and all that kind of stuff. But with that being said, thank you all for watching this video, and I will see you all in tomorrow's news recap. Later.